everyone, and welcome to China EVs and More, where my co-host Lei Xing and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the China EV, AV, and mobility sectors. We will open the room up at around the 40-minute mark to anyone who's keen to ask us any questions. What Lei and I discussed today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. If you enjoy this room, please help us get the word out to other enthusiasts, and of course, tune in again next week. My name is Tu Li. I am the managing director at Sino Auto Insights, a Beijing-based management consultancy, a Beijing-based management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at sinoautoinsights.com, which of course I encourage you all to do. Good evening, Lei. Can you please introduce yourself?
Good evening to Beijing / Detroit based.
Confused, basically.
An asterisk there. Good evening from my side. I am your co-host Lei Xing, former chief editor of China Auto Review. And this is episode number 84. And I'm still thinking about the past week. Awesome newsletter you just pushed out today with that collage of photos. I was actually trying to do that, but thank you. You've done the work, so I can just repost those.
Those thousands of pictures that I took, actually, I pulled a few off. So
yeah, I mean, oh my goodness. And well, where do we begin, right? After last week,
it was actually pretty nonstop, I think, last week, right?
No, up until the charity. Well, after the charity preview, right? Even.
Yeah, we had a nice dinner though too, right?
We should talk a little bit about the charity preview, because I think one really person that we met was Sandy Monroe, and
who's currently in Vietnam,
right? And I think he is probably one of the most vocal on the Chinese. If you've seen his videos and his comments on the Chinese players, basically what he says is that they'll eat everybody's lunch, right? So he's one of those very vocal, and we showed him, you showed him all the sights and sounds in Beijing, all the cars that you got to see, right? And their jaws dropped.
Yeah, just over the last few months before I left, right? So
yeah, and I remember him saying, a lot of these companies are still sleeping.
He was talking about the Western companies, by the way.
Yeah, and I think this is the first time that we've attended the charity preview, you and I, and it was good to meet some of the old acquaintances. Right. Andreas Weller, he was the former president of ZF Asia Pacific. And we, and he right there on the show floor, he brought up his podcast, phone. And, I just told him, look for China EVs more. And he says, okay, I'm going to listen to it. And the other person was James Tobin, the former Magna Asia president.
Yeah, for you, it was definitely a reunion of sorts, right? So
yeah, and we nerded out with all the cars, with the Tux, and we had a selfie with Bill Ford. So
yeah, that was it was just the perfect ending to the week. That was part automotive, part Detroit history, part Detroit rejuvenation, and kind of my obligation to you and Justin coming into town, showing you what I see and what I feel is a huge opportunity that Detroit has, especially now that the IRA has passed and Biden came into town. Because, as I wrote in my newsletter earlier, without Biden and us bumping into Ambassador Chin at the auto show, and the highlight was, from a car standpoint, it was the Mustang, the launch of Gen 7. But you and I think that it was kind of an evolutionary change rather than a revolutionary change. But the event with those hundreds of Mustangs was awesome, right? That was just kind of a car guy's dream.
So by the time you listen to this, our audience who listened to this episode, the previous episode, which we recorded together, will have already been dropped. I think we're working on that. Should be pushed out in the next day or two, I believe. And so there's two ways for you to, our listeners, to kind of see and read or hear what we did. So one is the pod that we recorded last week, and two is the newsletter that CinoAutoInsights.com. Make sure to go on there and read your recap of the event, our get-together trip.
Yeah, so, and this is where cars were a part of it, but weren't the key ingredient. There were so many other things going on.
Yeah.
With regards to mobility, number one, because we went to a pitch contest, saw 13 mobility startups pitch, about 12 judges or 10 judges.
Yeah, and just so many things, really. I mean, every one of them stood out. There wasn't, right? There's so many highlights. Hard to pick one that was...
We can't show any pictures, but we got to see the book depository and this Michigan Central Station, and then
very very exclusive tour, I would say.
And then on Friday we came about a half an hour late to our next energy because our good friend Steve Levine had fat fingered the address for us.
But now we know where their locations are.
Their global headquarters. We do know where their global headquarters are. And I actually think Steve just wanted some alone time with Mujib and team. So.
Yeah. But anyways, coming back to this week, nonetheless, so much happened again since I come back from Detroit within the past week. And I guess the most blockbuster of news is the Gotion's reportedly $3.6 billion investment in Western Michigan. That was reported by Detroit News, which you had shared initially.
It hasn't been confirmed by Gotion, so I've spoken with a few journalists who reached out to Gotion.
Right, and I've also reached out to a very senior level person within Gotion. He hasn't responded on the report. I sent him the report. So, but still, it's as we say, it's beating CATL to the punch, sort of. And it's, as you said, it's in UAW territory, which is all interesting. And also the backdrop is Michigan had lost to Kentucky, Tennessee on some of the Korean battery manufacturing partnerships that Ford and GM had. Right, so I think Governor Whitmer was a little bit, criticized against, but now if this happens, this is huge.
We have to remember that this is an election year, so there are likely going to be more of these pushed out or accelerated to perhaps make certain politicians look a little bit better. So
yeah, and it makes me think back to the ambassador's Chin's visit. He was at the Lincoln and probably later on at the Ford booth for quite a significant amount of time. And then later on that day or the day after, Jim Farley tweeted a photo of him with Bill Ford and Ambassador Chin, which says basically to the effect of, the U.S. economy, right? China, this is the largest auto market in the world. Continued strong commercial relations between the U.S. and China are important for the economy, and I quote. So I'm sure this is, I call it the automotive diplomacy or the EV diplomacy, relating to what Gotion is, possibly doing in Michigan. And with Ford having the cover fire on CATL, I'm sure there's, on the high up, there's been discussions. There's been lobbying of sorts, at least for as you say, availability, right? And I was just reading that article from Wall Street Journal on the rising lithium prices to over $70,000 per ton because the EV sales are rising in China. So much is at play, and especially the geopolitical juggling, and CATL was due to make an announcement, but now we have this Gotion play. And I think the one wild card is Gotion is 26% owned by Volkswagen. So, that's different, a bit different from some of the other Chinese companies.
Yes.
Right. And we have speculated who it might be based on that previous announcement of a major U.S. listed automaker that they had announced last year. Gotion announced last year, and it can only be one of the big three or Rivian. There's nobody else, right? It couldn't be Faraday Future,
right?
It couldn't be
Faraday couldn't afford them right now. So
well, Faraday Future, they announced the EPA rating of the 381-mile FF91 and saying that means it's closer to market launch. But good luck.
Well, there's a lawsuit right now between Faraday employees and some of the board members trying to get them kicked off the board. So there's always drama with Faraday.
Yeah, and also from that article, I think what I got was there's this strategic outreach attraction reserve fund that's about $1 billion, and 3/4 of it is given to GM, $100 million to Ford, and then there's this like $200 million left. That in the article it was speculated that could this be for Gotion, right? So there's this investment incentives.
One thing that I wanted to emphasize is we shouldn't miss the forest from the trees, because what I had written in the newsletter was this effectively closes the door on if China Battery Inc. is coming, because we kind of heard about CATL, kind of know about BYD, and now this is a third battery cell manufacturer from China that's talking about entering the US market. So those if questions should be closed for good, and they are going to come to the US at a certain point in time, regardless of whether the relationship between the US government and the Chinese government is good, bad, or indifferent. The market is too large, the opportunity too lucrative. And now it's just finding the right partner that will give them that cover fire, the political umbrella that they need. But also, on the local, if we're looking at the U.S. government federally versus the local state governments, $3.6 billion, it gets you a lot of jobs. So you approach a city or a state with that type of investment,
2,000 jobs.
Then, yeah, they're going to be receptive. So, it's all politics is local, right? So again, I speculated whether this was the Detroit News with a scoop, whether it was Gotion sending out a trial balloon to see how it would play out in public, or if they're actually negotiating in the media with the Big Rapids or the regional Michigan government to try to get a better deal, right? And so it could be all three, it could be none. But
here's a question maybe for you, or we can discuss. Let's hypothetically say this is confirmed, and let's say that lead time we it's a long lead time, right? From confirmation to actually start producing and supplying. That'll take I don't know how many years.
Let's say 30 months.
Right. Even then, this play would probably, the IRA, there's two requirements, one on the battery components and one on the sourcing of the minerals. Right. So this would still, this might work for the battery components side of it, but what will end up happening is whatever cars are equipped with Gotion batteries, it still misses that mineral requirement. So what we're looking at, no matter if BYD produces in the US or CATL, that the other half of the equation it really can't be addressed. And what's going to end up happening is, if I'm a consumer, I won't get that half or the 3750 part of the subsidy, right? The credit, correct?
Yeah, because battery manufacturers on the battery cell side also get a rebate, because we talked to Mujib about that, right? So
right, it's 35, possibly 35 plus 10, right, per kilowatt hour. Yeah. And he had to confirm with one of his, I guess, government relations.
Yeah, the head of government relations. He got her on the phone while we were sitting there in the conference room. So
yeah, that was interesting. But
because it was Steve that actually brought it up, it was either or, that he thought it was either or, but it's an additive thing where it could be a total of $45. So
yeah, considering the midterm elections, considering the party congress next month, there could be, depending on the timing, that I wouldn't be surprised if, I think there will be more announcements before the end of the year. So from another company.
I think so too. The other thing, Lei, that I think is important to note is that there is likely going to be reaction from the Chinese government too. Now, these battery cell manufacturers have likely vetted investments into the United States with the Chinese government prior to any of these announcements. But if they leak on the US side before they're completely approved, then there could be problems. Or depending on backlash locally in China, the Chinese government could also then change their mind about whether they like this or not, right? But if we get into the 30-month time frame that we think Job 1 would roll out of a Gotion factory in Big Rapids, that's right when a GM is launching the Blazer and getting up to mass production, the Equinox, the Hummer. So at least just on the Chevy side for General Motors, they have a lot riding on basically one supplier, one cell manufacturer. And so I don't think they would feel comfortable single sourcing cells from one battery supplier. So,
and speaking of Hummer, so Hummer EV will be imported through that Durant guild, which launched, I think, earlier this week with the interesting that they had a stream of the Chinese actor. That was that was strange.
That would be one of the biggest cars I've ever seen in China.
We saw that.
So
we saw that at the charity preview and at the show, right? So
it is a humongous vehicle.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Besides that, then it's the other gas guzzlers that they're importing: the Tahoe, the Yukon, Corvette, Silverado. It's an interesting play. I don't know how it'll play out, but from the show that they put on, I didn't feel like there was a match from the actors or the actresses that they chose. It just didn't right like when you live in the U.S. and see these big trucks. Yeah.
I know some of the agencies that worked on those marketing campaigns. So, it's trying to build history into a China market that doesn't know who that. I think we joked about it last week, right? They probably don't even know who Durant is. So, building excitement, yeah. So, but it's like a combination of a heritage and excitement and new technology, not new technology, but new vehicles that are hard to get. So, it's not going to move the sales needle for sure, but it is what it is.
But anyways, Gotion, so one of the big stories, and the other one obviously is XPeng G9. One word I would use is it's kind of underwhelming, or a thumper.
No, but I think that $45,000 price point is pretty makes it pretty compelling.
Yes, we had a discussion on WeChat with Will, who just test drove the G9, I believe, and his and myself included conclusion was the pricing based on the features. So this is one of the things that I think was turning off people, and Will and I weren't the only ones. If I look at the Chinese media chatter, a lot of people think the pricing will be an issue because the way how they optioned it in terms of price points. So they had these 3 things that you had to purchase as an option, right? So the XNGP, the 5D music cockpit, and one of the other things was
hold on a second, Lei. So the 5D music and gaming cockpit is basically like a movie where there's the 4D where the seats shake and the water mists your face, and so they put that in a vehicle.
Right.
In fact, they put that in the G9.
Right, and then the other one is the 4C supercharging battery pack, which you had to pay 10,000 RMB more. So there were 3 of these options that you could play with, but
so they did kind of the opposite of Li Auto. They kind of nickel and dime you with options, right?
Right. So what happened is a lot of the feature that they showed on launch event will not be available in some of the lower trims. And if you upgrade, so that 300,099 model, right? The really this has nothing.
It's pretty bare bones.
Yeah, no options. Nobody gonna choose that probably. And the only model that offers the 4C charging is the 650X, which is 450,000 RMB. That's the only one that even offers that. So initially, the other models that will be on the market will be 3C. So it's not going to get that, let's say, the 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 200 kilometers. So, and we also, you were on that call with Brian. Maybe you want to, share some of the comments he said on
right on. Right? So I see that friend of China EVs and more, Elliot Richards, is on. So I would invite him on because I did watch his 11-minute video of his drive through the G9. So Elliot, if you are listening actively, we'll pull you up in about 15 minutes so you can tell us what you think, number one. And then number two, yes, we were both invited to the media call with Brian and Xinzhou, who's the head of their autonomous driving unit. He was actually in the US. And so he missed about 20 minutes of the call and then jumped on a little bit later. But this was a media call to discuss all of the announcements, the G9 launch, the fast charging. Are they calling it fast charging, Lei?
The super fast charging.
Super fast charging, and then
supercharging. Let's just put it supercharging. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, Brian kind of gave us an overview of the announcements, and then it was a Q&A, and Marie was coordinating who could ask questions. And so when my turn came, I basically asked, my first question was, why did City NGP take so long? And he didn't say there were any technical issues, but he did say that there's always a regulatory review because City NGP or NGP involves HD maps. And so he said Guangzhou took a bit of time to approve the HD map, and that was a big part of the delay, he said. And he also said next year, Highway NGP, City NGP will be combined, and it'll be called XNGP. And they'll move from the NVIDIA Xavier chip that has about 30 tops to the Orin chip, which will move to about 500 tops. So we're talking light years and light speed versus the Xavier chip. And so he mentioned next year the G9 would have that option. So I'm assuming that it'll cost more than the 28,000 that you had mentioned on it in a tweet, I think. So,
well, 28,000 renminbi is the XNGP.
oh, is it, okay,
package,
is X?
Which in their presser, the fine print, I tweeted that in most cities by 2023 and full point to point by 2024, whatever that means.
So this is what Brian said. He would like to see the rollout of City NGP, one city per month in China.
Okay.
So
Guangzhou, they recently announced the pilot, right? Still on a pilot basis.
Right.
Not actual.
And so they're working with, obviously, on getting that regulatory approval for the HD maps for every other city, it looks like. And then the second question I asked when it came back around to me was the challenges they've had growing and building their reputation internationally. And I said, I'd heard that there was disappointing sales in Europe. And he was like, well, we don't have a sales target per se. And so I pushed back a little bit on that. But yeah, it sounds like they're pressing reset a little bit on Europe. And I think they're going to rely heavily on, in the next 12, 14, 18 months, on the G9 to be a catalyst for the European market, since the G9 was designed
right
as their global car. So
right, the first global car, right? And then one of the other features I think was that at least the Chinese consumers they care quite a lot about is the air suspension. I think it was, if you wanted one with that feature, I think the lowest price point was the 399,000. So
I just don't know why they do that. Why they make things, because Neo did that too. Like had like 3, 4, 5 different option packages that just seem confusing.
Yeah, I think this was one of the things that was talked a lot about, and especially a day after Li Auto pushed out this L8 launch with the teasers on the L7 and L6.
Yes.
And how they do it, right? The in terms of positioning, price point, the 500,000 RMB, 400,000, 300,000.
Yes.
And what they included. So one thing that the LA I think was interesting was they had this Pro or Max versions, right?
A la Apple.
Yeah, and one of the difference, if you read it, was I think the Pro had the Horizon Robotics chip. Journey, I forgot if it was Journey 3 or 5, but if you wanted a higher, better one, the Max had the orange chips. So that was interesting. But Li Auto was one of the first to have the Horizon Journey chips anyways.
Well, it's a match because they're both Beijing-based companies.
And,
right?
And so He Xiaopeng is saying, this is, right, in the launch event, he likened it to the Cayenne.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, 500,000 renminbi and below, the best car you can buy. But at the end, he said, we're gonna beat Q5 in sales next year, 10,000 a month. And then so Li Auto comes right back. So I tweeted that this is just the cutthroat nature. And you said in the chat that there's no breathing room. You launch something that you think is the best out there. Next day, somebody else comes right back with a challenger. And this is,
in Li Auto's case, 3 challengers, right?
Yeah. And a couple of days before, Li Auto also pushed out some OTA and upgrades that they're gonna do in a not too distant future is on the L9. So they've delivered the L9 for some time now. They've already received feedback from their owners or customers, and they already announced several feature upgrades that they're gonna push out. Imagine a Volkswagen doing this. Imagine the Legacies doing this. That's why I said,
I can't imagine that, because they can't.
Yeah, the way that the competition is, how these companies react to their owners' requests. It's just, right? We talk about the smart EV startup times, light years ahead of the legacies.
Well, and it sets an expectation too that if you want to attract a Chinese consumer, you have to be able to also read and react very quickly. And if the vehicle isn't attractive on a feature side and you can't keep up with the velocity of changes or updates being made on the software side, you're basically out of the game completely if you're a legacy automaker in China, right?
Right, and right, I mean, you showed some of the videos to Sandy Monroe, and he was like, "Whoa!" The HMI for the Li Auto L9, correct?
Yeah, it was just funny because he and this was admittedly, he was like, "Who are you guys?" Right, and so then we talked for about 2 minutes, and then he just kind of just embraced us. And he's like, "Oh my God, this is fantastic." I just showed him a handful of pictures and then he knew we were legit. And then he just started like talking to us and then gave us his QR code for his contact information and all this other stuff, right? I thought that was the funniest thing because he was completely by himself except for his handler. So no one else was talking to him or paying attention to him. So I thought that was a little bit weird, but maybe he's persona non grata for the legacies there, right?
But he did mention, our good friend Elias here. In the previous weekend, they were at the Fully Charged live show in San Diego, and everybody was coming up and talking to him. So that shows you the contrast of, I guess, Detroit and other more EV places, I guess.
Right. And if you didn't hear earlier in the show, he is currently in Haiphong visiting VinFast. So
yeah, I see a lot of people over there. I guess maybe for the same event that VinFast is doing. Yeah.
If you want to take a trip to Vietnam, let me make a call, man. All you got to do is say yes, and we're headed to Vietnam. So,
oh man, and it's right next to China, and you can't go back, which makes me sad.
And then maybe we wait until Taylor's in Shenzhen, and then he can meet us over there.
So yeah, and the other thing is, the G9 is starting deliveries at the end of October, and Li Auto comes out with this L8 launch on September 30, and remember they had said the reveal is the launch. So launch on September 30, and then delivery start at the beginning of, well, at least in November. So now it will be interesting to see what Li Auto claims as the first choice for consumers of 400,000 RMB and below 6-seater SUVs versus the G9. So
this is craziness, absolutely crazy. How much pressure has Li Bin and Li Auto and Li Xiang? Yeah, they're out there taking pictures in Munich, right? And freaking at Oktoberfest.
Li Bin, he just shared a post or a thread on the app, new app, Chinese app. So he's in Germany with Li Hong, the co-founder and president, and he's doing a 10-day road trip on an ET7 starting yesterday. So they went from Munich to Frankfurt, and then today from Frankfurt to Dusseldorf. I guess next they'll be going to Amsterdam, the Netherlands, and yeah.
Culminating in the big event in Berlin on October 7th.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, I'm not sure if they're going to stay there for that long. They might, but...
Yeah, so there's a big NEO event on October 7th in Berlin.
Well, it's like a NEO day for Germany, right?
Yes. And
good thing we can watch it at noon our time on the 7th.
There's a good chance that they may be interviewed for an Economist article coming out in early October because I connected a NEO person to Simon Wright and Ludwig Siegel, who are doing an article on EV and software that for the Economist October issue. So let's see if they're able to pin down Li Bin or Qi Hong. So
Li Hong.
Or Li Hong, sorry. Qin Li Hong, that's right.
Qin Li Hong, yeah. Yeah.
Oh man. So yeah, it's like Neo's out there just chilling in Europe while freaking XPeng and Li Auto are like brass knuckle brawling in China. So
well, William has said in a previous earnings call that they expect record Q4 every month. So is he home free? We don't know, but looks like he's having fun.
But both. So let me give a little bit of background on this whole announce on Sunday, sell on Monday. So automotive companies in the United States traditionally, and this had to do a lot to do with NASCAR. If NASCAR races were on Sunday and you won, so it was like win on Sunday, sell on Monday. Okay. And this is kind of what Li Auto has getting back to. We're announcing the day before, and then we're going to sell the day of. And when Steve was still alive at Apple, that's what he always wanted to do. So at Macworld and WWDC, when he made these announcements, he wanted to be able to say, and we're starting to ship tomorrow, right? And so Apple's gone away from that, but it looks like Li Auto really wants to go back to, you know what right when we announce it, we're going to drop and start production and sales the next day. So
yeah, so I think the conclusion is for the G9, they have their work cut out for them because of the price. You believe the price is actually okay, but really the comparison is at those price ranges, what are other competitors offering? Maybe they're offering more than you, so that might be troublesome. And for Li Auto, they're kind of due because they had a disaster August because of the one was done, so to say.
But they might actually have a pricing issue too then, right? Because depending on what the L8, the L7, the L6 is priced at, because now we're talking smaller and smaller versions of effectively the same car. So how are they really going to separate all these different, because they're all going to be E-revs, right? Because I think all the L versions of these vehicles are E-rev.
Yeah, L designate the E-revs. That's correct.
Yes.
But also just surprising, or I wonder, we've only heard really the L7, L6 within the last, I know L7 was talked about some time ago, but it looks like, the Chinese saying for this type of thing is 下饺子, which means dumplings. You throw dumplings into the water to boil. And this is what Li Auto has done. And I wonder if that was planned or not. Sometimes these companies, they tease these models, but all of a sudden Li Auto is like, oh, we have these. Now we're going to launch them.
Well, the L8 looks almost exactly like the L9.
It's a little L9, and the L7 is a little L8, and the L6 is a little L7.
And people thought the Audis really look similar, but the L9 and L8 are spitting images. There's not really if I'm looking at both, I don't own an L9, so I can't tell detailed wise what the differences are. But if I just look at both pictures, I don't know what the difference between them are. I think some differences in the front fascia, but there's definitely, we know that they're not great at positioning and differentiation, because if they were, then the Li 1 wouldn't have stopped production effectively because of the L9 production. So these are startup growing pains, right? So,
but yeah. So, as I said, conclusion is both are work cut out. And
so, hey, Lei, we are at 9:47. Let's open the room up for anyone, because I know last week we weren't around. So if anybody has any questions, they can just raise their hand. Elliot, if you're listening, feel free to raise your hand. We'd love to hear from you about the G9, your experience. I watched your 10-minute video, so I recommend those folks who are curious about the G9, the XPeng G9, to watch Elliot's video as well. But we'll open the room up for any questions. But the one thing that we can also talk about is, I don't know if you saw that, Lei, but Doug Field from Ford, he got another promotion. So
added duties.
He looks like he's basically trying, Jim Farley's trying to make Doug Field Ford's savior, effectively.
Yeah.
So
I think that press release, it seems that they were banking on getting the software with some of the other hires, I think.
Yeah, Roz Ho and Jay Park. Yep. So I think these are, remember a long time ago, probably right when we started this podcast, I had said that we need to see legacies hiring tech people to be in leadership roles, and that's what we're seeing now, right? I think it's great. The one thing, the John Lawler taking over global supply chain, that seems a little bit weird because. But
then the other story was the $1 billion charge that then on Q3 on the supply chain, they have thousands of vehicles sitting in the lots, which drove share prices, right? They're one of the few times that Ford had lost how much percentage of, right?
Yeah.
Tanked the whole stock market or something. Yeah, it's one of the FedEx moments of last week.
Oh, right. Yeah, and it's, how Tai Tang is leaving on October 1st. And so I think Doug is quickly going to become the hero, the GOAT, in the next 14, 18 months. But, I don't know if it's even worth mentioning, but you saw that post that you had tweeted about Ford potentially producing Broncos and Rangers in China.
I did ask my mole, and his reply was, "Oh, that'll be nice, but I don't know." Because he drives the Broncos Sport, which is nice. I got to sit in it for a few minutes. Yeah, it's a,
dude. What are you talking about? We did that thing at the auto show.
No. That's a different thing. I'm talking about just everyday driving.
Oh, so yeah. But Ford looks to be getting much more aggressive, generally speaking, right?
Yeah.
But they have two important products. I think the Mach-E, it's I don't see that being a volume seller like they need it to be. The F-150, yes, but the Mach-E, it'll sell, but I don't know, because they don't make profits off of any other vehicle, and so I don't know how that's going to change or transform with their current products. But the one thing that we saw while you were in Detroit was the Chevy Blazer was everywhere.
Yeah.
And so that bodes well for the electric version, right?
Hopefully.
Yeah, but
so some of the other headlines, I think AV related, was the so CATL had a lot of news pushed out. They were at the IAA Transportation in Hanover. They launched some commercial vehicle applications. So they have this two new acronyms, MTB and MTV, for trucks and buses, I think. And also they reached that agreement with this energy storage.
Yep.
The 10 gigawatt hours. That's a lot, I think, for energy storage. FlexGen, I think, in the US.
Yep.
And also the Leap motor, right? The Hong Kong listing, and their C01 launches next week. And they already have 100,000 pre-orders, reportedly, for that car. Just, yeah.
They're also building excitement for their IPO later this year, right? So,
and I think the other big news that dropped this week was NVIDIA's Drive Thor with the 2000 tops, and Zeekr again is the first customer of that SoC, but that'll be in 2025. And then QCraft is the first AV platform to use NVIDIA Orin chips on their robotaxi fleets.
And they partnered with an SOE, right?
Yeah.
QCraft did?
Yeah, one of the SOEs.
I forget which one.
Yeah.
But we're gonna see more of that. We're gonna see more of that.
And Pony AI teaming up with Geely and Cao Cao Mobility in launching services in Suzhou.
We haven't heard much from Pony lately, that's for sure.
Yeah. And I guess the other, the battery swap from Rising Auto, that SAIC formed a company with two of the biggest oil giants in China to do this.
There goes the big pivot. Right?
Yeah, it's Neil led the way, and people are following.
Yes. So whether or not it's a thing in the rest of the world, it is a thing in China.
Yeah, and on also on September 28th, so the Leap Motor CO1 launch and the BYD Europe product premiere. And Hertz, the other big story, Hertz buying up to 175,000 vehicles from GM.
Oh yeah, that's right. So you didn't you do the calculation? Tesla was 100 grand,
340,000.
Yeah,
together with Tesla and
Volvo.
Polestar.
Yeah, Polestar.
Yeah, Polestar and Volvo EX90. They had that event with talking about safety.
And then you also saw, and these are just quick reviews, guys. So if we're flying through, apologies. But SK, was it SK that invested a bit of money into Polestar? I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah. So they have a fund that they joined with Geely on, and they invested a small bet into Polestar.
Yeah.
So, and that's all I have today. I'm looking at my newsletter. Nothing. Well, so yeah. One of the last things is the Made in China Model Y is number one for resale value after year one in China, and it holds about 89% of its value after year one.
Oh, speaking of percentage, one number, I'll probably will post this later on Twitter, that speaking of the CATL, they are the monopolistic when it comes to battery swappable heavy-duty trucks in China. So they supply over 98% of the LFP batteries on those battery swappable trucks.
So they're basically the only game in town.
Yeah, and the other ones are really, I think there was Eve and maybe Calb. Yeah, so, yeah, also, the Mercedes-Benz trucks with the long haul, E-Actros long haul, and the Nikola, right? Nikola with some of the hydrogen trucks. So just so busy, man. Every week, man. Because we don't look at China anymore. We look at the globe, and there's just too much going on every week.
Why don't we do some housekeeping? You can talk about us being in Austin next week.
Yes, so we will be in Austin next week for Move America. So it's like a mobility convention conference. There's all sorts of topics, and we're a media partner. So we'll be there next week, early next week, and I guess we'll network and we'll see what's going on and how it's different than Detroit. First time in Austin. I think Austin, one of the concept cars of NIO, the Eve, I think had its global debut at one of the Southwest. I think it was March 2017, if I remember correctly, in Austin. So,
and we'll try to find our next one or two Max guests out of this Austin visit. And I'm looking forward to it. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting people down there.
Oh, and also I got back in touch with Shakil Avatni, the founder of Clear Motion, the Boston-based. And I had met him in Beijing a few years ago. And they just got an investment from Neo Capital after 10 years after he founded the company. So, I told him, would love to have you on the pod. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's all for me, man. There are no other questions. Maybe we can close out the room.
Yeah. And it's, feels weird to be doing this
yes,
virtually again. We had fun doing it in Tech Town. But I guess there's still lots of going on next week. But I guess next week we'll be back to our respective places on Thursday, and we'll recap Austin and some of the other news coming out of the China EVAV mobility space.
Yeah. And yeah, it is a little weird because I can't believe it's already Thursday of this week. So anyways, all right, guys, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and thanks for joining. We will talk with you all next week.
Well, likewise. Thank you, and we'll talk to you next week.
That brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Lee, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAutoInsight. You can find Lei on Twitter at LeiXing77. That's LEIXING77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China, EVs, and more.